especially now, we'll pay more attention to the view to like ratio. So how many views a particular episode gets versus how many people actually go ahead and hit that like button. And that's going to tell me whether or not that episode was a dud or not, and then I can figure out why. And that's going to help me to gauge a couple things. A, the topics that I'm covering, which is important, but also how I'm going about delivering it. So I can, when I have a benchmark for how to figure that out, I can go ahead and figure out what it is that you didn't or did like about a particular episode. Of course, you can also always leave me a comment and let me know, which would be much appreciated. Even if you didn't like an episode and you want to tell me why, that's okay. That's fine. I appreciate the feedback. Of course, if you loved it and you want to tell me how great I am, I'd take that too. But either way, please make sure to play the Did It Suck game with me. If you like this episode, you get value from it, make sure to hit the like button. And if you don't, make sure you don't. Don't just be nice to me, okay? Alright. So, with that all out of the way, here we go. Let the game begin. Okay, so again, the question is, how do people generally become front-end web developers? First, I want to tell a little bit of my story because I think you'll probably resonate with it, and hopefully it can inspire you to
Method.
keep moving,
Method.
put in even more
Method.
effort
Method.
for your goals and
Method. 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 Result. 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 result, 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 result,
result, result, result,
result, result, result, result, result,
result,
result, result, result, result, result, result, result, result, method, 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 method,
Front end web developers. First, I want to tell a little bit of my story because I think you'll probably resonate with it, and hopefully it can inspire you to keep moving and put in even more effort and more action towards your goals as a web designer or web developer. So, I didn't get into web design until I was almost 23 years old. And I didn't come from a family of tech heads, and I definitely didn't come out of the womb as some sort of tech guy that just knew how to code. I was more of a jock slash construction worker type. And that's the kind of family that I really came from. All my older brothers played sports, were really good at sports. My dad was in the military. A lot of my older brothers were in the military. Their work at that time was a lot of construction work. That was kind of the mold and the type of family that I came from. It definitely wasn't a tech head type family. For example, like you see Mark Zuckerberg on the social network being tutored how to code at age 7. That was not me by any stretch. Now, that said, I always did have a passion for building things. And that was something that's always been with me. Now, I say all of this because I meet a lot of developers who it seems like they think there's this innate geek gene that makes a great developer, and you either have it or you don't. I don't believe that. I don't.
Hey there, so I don't know what I'm going to title this video yet, but as far as I'm concerned now, the title is What I Wish Someone Told Me When I Started Web Development. I have people ask me all the time, hey, I want to start web development, what do I do? What do I learn? And at what point are employers going to say, man, I want to hire this guy? And so I'm like, oh, you found the right video. If that's you, you've got to watch this video because I'm going to shortcut years off your learning experience. And I'm going to tell you stuff that a lot of developers don't like to tell people, because they like to keep it a secret because it makes them feel like they'll be easier to hire if nobody else knows this stuff. But I don't think that way. I'm just going to tell you everything. So if you're wanting to learn web development, I'm going to tell you this is it. I'm going to dump it all out into this video. So track with me. I've got a Coggle mind map here that hopefully will make it easier to understand. And I'll show you what to learn and what order to learn it in, and what course to take to actually be ready for a job description that someone is trying to find today looking to hire. No matter what you do, if you're going to go into web development, you got to learn basic front end. That's HTML, CSS, JavaScript. This is your first step. Get comfortable in the basics of all three of these. And here's the reason why. Is because no matter what browser you're using, if you're using Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, iPhone, iPad, Android, it's running these three languages in the browser. It's opening up an HTML page with CSS styles and JavaScript functionality. Everything runs this. These are the three browser languages. It used to be Flash was on this list, but thank God Flash is dying out. Just don't learn Flash. Don't put it on your resume. It doesn't help. It doesn't really, maybe there's a Flash developer out there that's going to get mad at me for saying that, but it's basically a dead technology. Basic front end, learn it. Learn HTML, that's easy. You learn it in a couple days. CSS, you don't have to become a CSS ninja. Just learn how to do a basic layout on your own. Be comfortable with it. JavaScript, you don't have to do a whole bunch of crazy stuff, but learn the concepts of how JavaScript talks to a server. Which if you're starting off, learn jQuery and learn jQuery.ajax, jQuery Ajax command. And then you're done. I mean, if you want to go back, and that's about all you need to learn at first. Just learn how to hit a web service, get some information, and spit it out on a page. Basic front end. That's your first thing to learn. And then no matter which route you take, I'll go into this next. no matter which route you take, you want to learn a few things. Basic terminal usage. A lot of people avoid the command line or the terminal because it terrifies them to just see a black screen with a prompt. It's not scary, it's just scary because you don't know which 5 commands to use. You're gonna be locked into this realm of basic front end until you learn how to use the terminal, no matter which route you take. So you've got to learn it, and then the next step is learn GitHub. I got a video on these two. Basic level for this, I'll put it in
gọi
the
là gì ta, tiếng
description.
Anh hóa nghe không hiểu mà
And you know, I also have a blog post
chấm tiếng Anh
that I will put the link to in the description that kind of is going to
đó là phương pháp
recap all this, give you a link to this mind
bỏ
map,
tiếng Việt
because
đi
you're going to forget it probably.
nói gì vậy?
And I also strongly encourage you to look into Team Treehouse, because they have lessons to learn most of these things. And in the first 15 days, I have a link on the blog post for getting the first 15 days for free of video lessons, and after that it's only like $20 a month. A lot of people I talk to use Treehouse, and they are learning the web stuff fast. They're really, really good lessons on Treehouse, so check out that link no matter what you do. Get 15 days for free. And so, back to this. You want to learn basic terminal and GitHub. You want to learn about web services / they're also called APIs. Specifically, they can be called RESTful web services. You don't have to learn how to make them,
Bắt nhỏ xuống mày.
but you want to kind of learn what these things are. Basically, what a web service is it's how the browser talks to a server real time and gets information. It's how a server talks to another server and gets information to send to the browser, that kind of thing. Just kind of be comfortable with the concept of what a web service is. If you're doing jQuery Ajax, then you'll basically be using web services. I'll leave it at that because we'll get into it later. Okay, that's off the table for now. And now you've got 2 choices. You've learned basic front end. You know how to use the command line in GitHub. I'm ready to become like a full-on developer that people are hiring for. People are hiring front-end developers, and they're hiring back-end developers, and people are hiring people that know both. But you want to pick one or the other, and then you can get a job. And so, to kind of, before I illustrate what those are, let's say, how does the internet work real quick, just so you guys can understand what those 2 roles are. We got these 3 things. We got the client, also called the front end, and what that is that's your web browser. that's Chrome, that's your iPhone, that's whatever. And how the internet works is you say, give me twitter.com. And so the client, the browser, sends off twitter.com and it pulls up the twitter.com server. And the server says, okay, they pulled up Twitter, what do? Well, we give them the home page by default. What's the home page have on it? It has the top 100 most popular tweets. Okay, so then it talks to the database, which is where all this information's stored. It says, give me the top most recent tweets or whatever. That comes back to the server. The server puts it together in HTML, spits it back out to the client in the front end that makes it look all beautiful with their CSS and JavaScript. And then, the client does some smarter things as you scroll down and you're running out of tweets. It real time talks to the server, says, okay, I need 10 more tweets. Okay, let's get 10 more. Let's send it back out to the JavaScript. And so that's kind of your two worlds. You got your client, which is called front end, your server, which is called back end, and you it used to be these were the only developers, because if you think like 10 years ago for the internet, the front end was ugly. It was just information and links, and it was this basic front end was front end. That's all there was. But that is not the case anymore. Things have to be slick and smart, and they have to have cool user experiences and fun user experiences. You have to know where the mouse is on the page and do specific things based off of what the user's doing. You have to let them log in and load up their profile without reloading a new page. I mean, that's basically front-end developers. So if you're passionate about all that stuff, go front-end. You can always learn back-end and add back-end into it later, and vice versa. If you like data and you like budgeting and finances and you like organization and stuff like that, you're not as much of, you might not call
Tắt nhỏ
yourself
xuống mày
as
ơi.
much the
nhỏ
raw
xuống rồi con.
creative type who has to be into indie music that nobody's heard of. You might want to go back end it first. I'm not gonna stereotype the two, but either way, if you like developing, you'll like them both. So that's kind of might help you decide what to take. So I'm gonna get rid of you. You're gone. Don't need you anymore. Let's say you've chosen to go front-end developer. Don't get overwhelmed. There's not much on this. It just looks complicated. This is, if you learn these things, you are ripe and ready to go get a job as a front-end developer, and people are going to want to hire you. So the first thing you want to do is you want to learn a JavaScript framework, technically an MVC or MV whatever, MV Star JavaScript framework. There's about 30 of them out there, but I'll tell you what, people are hiring mostly Backbone JS developers and Angular JS developers right now. Used to be Backbone is like the main one, and then there's a decent bit of Knockout, but the majority of jobs, Backbone or Angular is what they're looking for. And here's kind of why is when you start writing thousands and thousands of lines of JavaScript to make this whole application that does your whole thing without ever navigating to another page, you need a framework that helps you organize that code in a way that makes sense, is not complicated, and just works without breaking if the user does some random thing. So that's where these frameworks come in. They're JavaScript, they're all JavaScript, but they kind of have their own dynamic to them, like kind of their own language and their way of doing things. If I was to pick one to learn, I'd pick Angular. I honestly think Angular's backbone is barely ahead in terms of how many jobs are out there right now. But there's a lot of jobs, a lot of people looking for Angular developers now. It's almost even, and in the next couple of years I think Angular's just gonna be more popular. Google makes Angular. It's kinda one of the big reasons. But seriously, if you learn one of these well, people are looking for Backbone JS developer. That's an actual job title. Angular JS developer. Learn one of these. Learn how to make a single page web app. With these things. And then if you want to learn both, it'll just make you available for more jobs. And then whichever one you learn, I put Knockout on there because it's kind of popular. It's enough to be mentioned. And there's a bunch of other ones that are out there that sure they're great to learn, Ember and other stuff, but hey, you're learning. Pick one of these two. Unit testing, whatever you do, learn how to write tests for your application in your framework. It's gonna look different for Angular, and it's gonna look different for Backbone. This is kind of like phase 2. You can get a job without knowing unit testing. It'll just kind of show that you're a true pro if you know how to write tests for your application. And I'll leave it at that. This is not a video where I'm gonna get into what that is. So that's gonna be the toughest part right there. Learn a JavaScript framework. And learn jQuery. You gotta know jQuery, but that's not really a framework. That's just kinda falls into basic front end. You gotta learn
there a CSS tool? These are really easy. These aren't languages, they're tools. Sass less stylist. Basically, you're writing CSS for all intents and purposes. But you can do some cool stuff like create variables and have it reuse certain parts of your code so you don't have to write it. For everything. Not gonna go into it. It's pretty easy to learn it in a few days. Sass is the one to learn. Less is almost identical. For all intents and purposes, it's almost the exact same thing. And then you want to learn a CSS framework, which is Bootstrap or Foundation are pretty much the two most popular. Bootstrap, I have a video out for that. I'll throw it in the description. What these let you do is these let you write with very little code a responsive web app, like a web app that just looks cool, looks clean. They give you a lot of built-in CSS rules to help you build widgets and build page layouts, so you're not having to hand code all this. And that also sets you up to where you can build it and tell the next developer, hey, I did this with Bootstrap, and they know how to go find information from Bootstrap on how and why you did what you did. And that kind of falls under responsive design. You need to know what this is and how to do it. Responsive design is, I don't know if you've seen all the new web pages now. If you resize your browser, the layout of the page changes to fit the size of screen you have. So if you pull it up on an iPad, the page looks different. And if you have a small browser window, it looks different. Images are smaller or bigger. That's called responsive design. You gotta know that now. It's not super complicated. You can really learn it in a couple weeks. And Bootstrap and Foundation are both responsive frameworks. So if you learn them, you're kind of learning responsive design. So that's a tool that's not really so much a language. And then front-end build tools. These are just little tools that you gotta learn. So remember how I mentioned if you're building a whole JavaScript application, you're gonna have thousands of lines of code sometimes, and you don't want them all in one file. That's a disaster. So you gotta split them up into a bunch of different JavaScript files. Maybe one for your header, one for your footer, one for your sidebar, one for your profile, one for your tweets listing. And then you want to be able to build those together into one compressed JavaScript file, so you're only sending your browser one file instead of 20 or 100 files. And So that's kind of where your build tool runs in. These all run on the command line, which is why you gotta learn the command line. And that's gonna run either grunt or gulp. Grunt is basically the popular big dog that's been out for years. Everybody uses grunt. Gulp is the new guy that's, I think, a lot easier to use, and it's basically a replacement for grunt. Learn grunt first, take a look at gulp. Basically what this is gonna do is you get a bunch of grunt will listen, and as you save a JavaScript file, it'll then compress all the JavaScript files together and spit it out and reload your web page real time. So that's kind of what grunt does. As you save your SAS file, it'll process it and turn it into a CSS file. That's kind of what grunt does. And then Yeoman.io, Yeoman uses grunt, and that's just kind of a fun thing. Look into that. Bower is package management. Package management is becoming a really big deal. You don't want to have to give people a jQuery file.
tweak, optimize, and personalize your website without help from IT.
Hey there. So, I don't know what I'm going to title this video yet, but as far as I'm concerned now, the title is What I Wish Someone Told. If I was to pick one to learn, I'd pick Angular. I honestly think Angular's backbone is barely ahead in terms of how many jobs are out there right now. But there's a lot of jobs, a lot of people looking for Angular developers now. It's almost even, and in the next couple years, I think Angular is just going to be more popular. Google makes Angular. It's kind of one of the big reasons. But seriously, if you learn one of these well, people are looking for Backbone JS developer. That's an actual job title. Angular JS developer. Learn one of these. Learn how to make a single page web app with these things. And then if you want to learn both, it'll just make you available for more jobs. And then whichever one you learn, I put Knockout on there because it's kind of popular. It's enough to be mentioned. And there's a bunch of other ones that are out there that sure they're great to learn, Ember and other stuff. But hey, you're learning. Pick one of these two. Unit testing. Whatever you do, learn how to write tests for your application in your framework. It's going to look different for Angular, and it's going to look different for Backbone. This is kind of like phase 2. You can get a job without knowing unit testing.
it'll just kind of show that you're a true pro if you know how to write tests for your application.
mention, 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 mention.
Khó trồng, còn cây mai của mình nó là dễ trồng. Cây mai ở vùng rừng mình trồng nó lên á, đúng rồi nó gãy rồi á. Cây mai này là cây mai hàng rào, cây mai này có hồn, mình có duyên mỗi người. Có duyên mới được. Thật ra nó có cây mai này dễ trồng.
mention,